Good morning. Who in your mind is the most famous person of all times? Let's exclude the religious world. So the non-religious world, who's the most famous person of all times? Just shout out a name. Einstein, okay.
Walt Disney.
Da Vinci, Walt Disney, okay. Lady Gaga. I happen to be a fan of DaVinci since we run the DaVinci Institute. Here's a few other possible people: Christopher Columbus, Isaac Newton, Einstein, Edison, Gandhi, maybe Rupert Murdoch, or maybe even this guy. But it's my contention that the most famous person of all times hasn't been born yet. Or we don't know who that is. And this should be a really inspiring thought, because there's an opening. There's an opening. You can aspire to be that person. So then the next logical question is, what is the accomplishment that will make that person the most famous? As another way of asking this question, what are the big things that still need to be accomplished in the world? I'm going to leave this question hanging for a little bit, and we're going to come back and we're going to try to answer it a little bit at the end here. But first of all, let's go through a scenario, and I want to thank Jeff and Michael this morning for kind of setting the stage for some of the things I'm talking about here, although I'll talk about them in a little bit more deranged way than they did. So the year is 2018, just slightly over 5 years into the future. The Norwegian Nobel Committee changes their process for selecting the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And what they've decided to do is they decided to hold a global election. With the introduction of a new secure web-based voting system, they asked the world to decide who the winner should be. Now they set up the process, and since they have a goal of promoting peace around the world, this is a logical direction to go. And they can promote it through the prize selection process. So what they do is they select a panel of 4 nominees to start with. They announce it 60 days before the election. The election itself all happens in one day. It's a 24-hour process. And anybody can vote via a smartphone, a tablet, computer, virtually any of these online mechanisms. So they have a peace mandate. I mean, they have an obligation to promote peace around the world, and this suddenly becomes their charter. And so this is a way of promoting peace in a way that they never had before. But rather than just having people vote on somebody, they want them to know something about the people that are the candidates. So they pre-test them. The electronic voting system allows them to do this. So what they do is they ask 2 questions, 2 fundamental questions about each of the candidates. And that forces people to learn something about these candidates. And each person has 4 attempts. You can try it 4 times to get it right. So it's not designed to trip people up. It's just designed to force people to get to know a little bit more about it. So the winner then is announced at the end of that period. 740 million votes cast. It could be more, it could be less. Coming from 50 different countries. And suddenly, the winner becomes the most famous person on earth. The winner's the most famous person on earth, more famous than any prime ministers, kings, presidents, all through this one voting process. There's a lot of other possible applications for this type of technology. We could select the Time Magazine Person of the Year. That would be a good use of it. We could select the next location for the Olympics or the next location for the World Cup. Also, great uses for it. But there's other things that can go wrong. Suddenly somebody can say, well, what if we want to select the world leader? Let's hold an election and decide who the world leader should be. yeah, they're going to run into a little objection there. Or who owns the moon? Let's decide that. Who owns the moon? Probably not a good way to do that. We can also get into voting on ownership of islands and settle country disputes and things like that. Some of these are going to cause extra problems. But this question comes up. At what point does a number of votes coming from a number of different countries, at what point does that constitute a new global mandate, where the countries themselves need to pay attention to it? This is different than signing petitions. This suddenly arises out of the woodwork. It crosses country borders, does something new and different. So how far-reaching will this technology be? And at what point do countries, people, and businesses push back? Somewhere along the way they will. And will it create new industries? The answer to that is yes, it will. This is what I call a catalytic innovation, because it's going to create some new things. Catalytic innovation is different than disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation disrupts existing industry, and there's some lines that are blurred here, but catalytic innovation creates entirely new industries. It unlocks new opportunities, does lots of different things. So catalytic innovations in the past were things like the invention of electricity, automobiles, planes, telephones. But all industries are a bell curve. They have a starting point and they have an ending point. And the thing we don't pay attention to is the ending point. Because all industries will eventually end. They will go away. 1,000 years from now, a lot of these industries are gone. But most industries today are in the second half of the bell curve. That's important to understand. But when we look at some industries like peak steel is kind of an interesting one. The steel industry, the peak employment of that industry happens before the demand for the product starts going down. The peak employment for the steel industry is probably somewhere around 1980. The estimates for the peak demand starting to diminish is going to be around 2024. That's what some of the estimates are right now. That may go on, but we're creating all these new synthetic materials that are probably going to diminish our need for steel. So when we talk about the bell curve of an industry that comes and goes, I'll talk about kind of a crazy example here. Josef Faber in 1845 created the Euphonium. This is a machine that could talk like a human being. It could speak in English or any European languages. It had 17 different keys. And it used this billows mechanism to blow air over an artificial tongue. And he was the foremost expert in artificial tongue technology. Come to think of it, there's never been another expert on artificial tongue technology. He was the only one. So his whole industry that he created revolved around one machine, which came and went in a single generation. He managed to get it into the Barnum and Bailey Circus and took it around touring, but eventually it just kind of all died. But when it went away, the technology ended up getting used by Alexander Graham Bell in some of the early designs for the telephone. So one industry leads to another. They feed off each other. Now, when I talk about 2 billion jobs going away, this doesn't mean that 2 billion people get unemployed. It means that our jobs are transitioning, and we're transitioning them at faster pace than ever before in history. So where will our next jobs come from? We're going to talk about 3 different areas that are causing job loss, and at the same time, they're causing job creation. We'll talk about driverless cars, teacherless education, and printable houses. Driverless cars. The people at Google are pushing the idea of driverless cars. They're pushing hard on this accelerator. They have a fleet of several Toyota Priuses that they've logged over 450,000 kilometers driving around the United States. Their idea is to actually turn Las Vegas into the test site for driverless car industry. Virtually every automobile company in the world virtually every company that's manufacturing anything that's mobile has a driverless division. They're working on driverless technology because it is so pervasive out there. This is the Chinese car. This is a Volkswagen. Incidentally, Mercedes has a model that's supposed to come out next year that will have a driverless feature. Think of this in terms of features for a vehicle. We have power steering, we have cruise control, and then we have a driverless feature. Now, Google wants to use Las Vegas as a test site. And the reason that Google wants to do this is because they want to own the operating system for all the driverless cars, which is a good idea because these cars need to talk to each other. You don't want them to run into each other. So the true advantages come when we are able to remove our hands from the steering wheel. First, it'll start off as, wow, this is a cool idea. We can let the car drive itself. Eventually, it becomes mandatory. We want to get rid of the human variable. We want to get rid of all the problems associated with it. As a result of this, it's going to eliminate lots of driving positions, all the taxi drivers, the limo drivers, bus drivers, truck drivers, things like that. At the same time, it's going to start creating tons more positions as we get into that field. And if you think of yourself, a few years from now, stepping out in front of your house, you pull out your smart device, and you punch in that you want to go to work, you want to go to school, you want to go shopping, a driverless vehicle will come and pick you up, take you to there, and they'll pick somebody else up from there and take them to where they want to go. It'll shift us from a just-in-case mindset, where we have a vehicle in our garage just in case we need it, to a just-in-time mindset, so that whenever we need it, it'll be there and we can go with it. And the car companies will then shift from the designing things for the driver experience to the rider experience. That'll be a major difference in the way they look at things. All right, shifting gears to teacherless education. Teacherless education, I gave a talk in Istanbul earlier this year. I was talking about teacherless education, and after the talk, one of the executives from Google came up to me and he says, we're real interested in teacherless education because we want to educate Africa, and teachers don't want to go to Africa. Now, this was a very revealing moment for me because that was so obvious. It was so clear that, no, teachers don't want to go to some of the more primitive places in the world. So we have this huge demand for teachers right now all over the world because we've got this traditional education system. So right now we're 18 million teachers short globally. 23% of all children growing up right now are not being educated because we decided that we have to have teachers there. So with all of the changes we're going to go through, we have to reboot our career, our skills more often than ever in all history. And so if we continue to have to insert teachers between us and what we want to have to learn, it's going to be this huge impediment. It's going to slow us down on all fronts. So figuring out ways of creating this teacherless education, and some of the ideas that Michael talked about this morning I think are just absolutely brilliant. Printable houses. 3D printing world is taking off like a rocket. If you're not paying attention to it, you really need to pay close attention to 3D printing. Printing things like products like this. But I'll show you this short video. This professor at the University of Southern California, he's an Iranian professor. They had a earthquake over in Iran, and it destroyed lots of houses over there. And he was thinking, well, why is it that we couldn't just create something that would enable us to recreate these buildings really quickly? And he hit on this printing technology. And it's printing with ceramics right now, and it's going to switch to printing with concrete in just a second here. Now, when you're able to, now it's showing printing with fast-drying concrete. And this technology he's been working on for several years, and this has come along very quickly. My thinking is that sometime within the next year, somebody's going to print the first house. It's not going to be a really good house, but it'll be the first one. It go down in the history books as the first printed house. And this technology is, I think, just absolutely brilliant. And he goes on in this video to show with the animations of how he thinks that printed houses can work. So once we're able to actually print buildings, and these guys over in Italy have this massive, huge printer, and they're already printing really large structures. Once we're able to print large buildings, and suddenly the architects have a heyday. Suddenly we don't need to have flat walls anymore. Every wall can be unique and different. It can be very creative. The buildings that we create, architects are going to go crazy because everything can be free-form structures and very unique and different. And incidentally, you can print with concrete for a while and then print with glass for a while and then print with concrete again. At least that's my vision of it. May not work in actual practice. But the type of buildings coming out of this are going to be mind-blowing. So what are the big things that still need to be accomplished? The question I asked earlier. One of them is controlling gravity. You know, we don't know much about gravity. Gravity kind of is this pervasive force, but once we're able to actually control it, even in a slight way, it kind of changes everything. I always like these quotes about controlling gravity. Werner von Braun says that we can lick gravity, but sometimes the paperwork is overwhelming. And then Clayton Christensen, he says that you may hate gravity, but gravity doesn't care. And then the most revealing one, of course, is Dave Barry. He says that gravity is a contributing factor in nearly 73% of all accidents involving falling objects. Yeah, it gives us true insight into this whole idea of controlling gravity, doesn't it? So some of the key takeaways here today. Driverless cars, teacherless education, printable houses are all catalytic innovations. They're going to create entirely new industries and change a lot of things along the way. Driverless cars will change the world as dramatically as the invention of the automobile itself. It will have that big of impact on transportation. Teacherless education will dramatically increase global intelligence because it allows anybody, anywhere in the world, to become smarter. And 3D printing will be bigger than the internet. This is actually a statement from Chris Anderson, the managing editor of Wired magazine. So over 2 billion jobs will disappear by 2030. So as we're destroying existing jobs, we're creating new jobs. McKinsey and Company says that for every job that gets eliminated by the internet, and we create these automations that eliminate 10,000 jobs at a time, 2.6 new jobs get created in the process in startup companies. That was their conclusion in a recent study. So we look at some of the true innovations that are still out there. What are the big things that still need to be invented? Well, instant sleep. I need this one. I need this myself. I want to be able to walk into this chamber and 3 seconds later walk out and I'm totally refreshed. How cool is that? I'm not sure about this mechanism here of standing on the street corner and doing it, but we'll see. And then truly the most valuable innovation of all times is going to be the flash dark. The flash dark is a flashlight that shoots out darkness rather than light. So if you're getting too much sun on yourself, you just shine some darkness on yourself. It's a truly ingenious innovation, and we desperately need it. With all of the work that we're doing, sometimes our best efforts just look like this, though. So as Thomas Edison says, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. And with that, I thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you.